This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 65 of the Dressage Radio Show on the Horse Radio Network. We would like to thank our sponsors, Equestrian Collections and Kentucky Performance Products. On the show this week, Toni Venhaus from New South Wales Dressage in Australia, and Tina Konyot, fresh from her winning streak at the U.S. selection trials.
It's been a tremendous journey. It's so exciting. And actually today was the first day I said, oh my God, we're going to the World Equestrian Games.
This is Chris Stafford in Lexington, Kentucky, and you're listening to the Dressage Radio Show. And on the show this week, I'm going to be joined by two great guests. Toni Venhaus from New South Wales Dressage. She is very influential in the sport down under, and she's going to tell us how the sport has developed in Australia. And Tina Konyot is going to join us a little bit later on in the show when she shares with us the excitement of having won all four competitions as part of the selection trials for the World Equestrian Games. So a fantastic couple of weeks there for Tina Konyot and Collecto V, as she makes her way onto the squad now for the World Equestrian Games. But we're going to begin this week with some news, of course, from the selection trials. The U.S. Equestrian Federation has named its shortlist and nominated entries for the Games, which begin, of course, on September 25th here in the Kentucky Horse Park. And on that team, it begins with Tina Konyot, age 48, from Palm City, Florida. She's going to be riding hers and John Brielson's 12-year-old Danish warm-blood stallion, Collecto V. Todd Fletcher, age 40, from Royal Palm Beach, Florida, riding the 14-year-old Danish warm-blood stallion Otto, owned by Sherry Knoll Farms. Catherine Bates and Chandler, age 35, from Wellington, Florida, riding Jane Forbes Clark's 15-year-old Dutch gelding Nathan. And Stefan Peters, age 45, from San Diego, California, riding the 12-year-old Dutch gelding Ravel, owned by Four Winds Farm. They are the top four named for the squad. And the other members of that squad will be Catherine Haddad, age 46, of course. Catherine, well known to us here on the Dressage Radio Show, often jumps in the co-host chair. Of course, she is based in Vector, Germany, and she rides her own 10-year-old Hanoverian gelding Winnemaro. Pierre Saint-Jacques, age 45, from Antony, Florida, riding his own 15-year-old Danish warm-blood gelding Lucky Tiger. Sue Blinks, age 52, from Encinitas, California, riding the 12-year-old Dutch warm-blood gelding Robin Hood, owned by the Minnesota Group LLC. And finally, in that squad is Jan Abeling, age 51. Jan is from Moore Park, California, and he's riding Anne Robney's and Amy Abeling's 13-year-old Oldenburg mare, Rafolka. So that's the squad that have been named for the team, and they will now prepare for final selection, which when they go back to Gladstone, New Jersey at the beginning of September, before the final four are shipped, five I believe, are shipped down to the Kentucky Horse Park to prepare for the game. So the best of luck to all of them as they make this final journey. And we're delighted that Tina is going to be a guest a little bit later on in the show. And then next week, we're going to be joined by Todd Fletcher. So we'll hear from some of our team as they continue what is going to be obviously a very exciting time for them over the next 4 weeks as the Dressage Radio Show follows them on their journey to the World Equestrian Games. And we also have another piece of news this week. There's going to be a new ride for one of the U.S. para-equestrian riders, Jennifer Baker. She had to withdraw her horse, on which she was originally selected for the shortlist entry for the World Equestrian Games. But apparently Jewel had to be withdrawn because of veterinary issues. And he has been replaced per the USEF selection procedures with Cranach, Cranach is owned by Akiko Yamazaki, who of course is a steadfast supporter of the sport, including owning Ravel, ridden by Stefan Peters. And she has made her horse available to Jennifer Baker. The 18-year-old Dutch gelding has been showing successfully at the Grand Prix level with Yamazaki and with Shannon Peters. That is, of course, Stefan's wife over there in California. So a fantastic replacement there for Jennifer Baker. so that she can continue her journey here to the World Equestrian Games. Well, there's just the two items of news this week on the Dressage Radio Show. We're going to take a short break here to hear from our sponsors, and then we'll be back to hear from our first guest this week, Toni Venhaus.
Equestrian Collections has become a favorite for many of our dressage listeners. They have a huge selection of products for every level of dressage rider. Whether you're looking for something for your horse, your barn, or yourself, you will find it all at Equestrian Collections. They have fantastic prices on the names you have come to love, like Rumpf, Ariat, Charles Owen, Daredale, Fitz, RSL, Carrots, and so many more. For the entire universe of equestrian shopping at your fingertips at a price you can afford, go to equestriancollections.com. That's equestriancollections.com. And don't forget to stop over and join their Facebook fan page. They have over 22,000 fans now over there, and some great conversations and a lot of fun contests. Everything you want out of a fan page for a company like Equestrian Collections is over there. Just search for Equestrian Collections on Facebook.
Well, our first guest this week, Toni Venhaus, is someone I've known for a while. She is as the husband of Frans Venhaus, who was the CEO of Australian Equestrian Federation in Sydney. And Toni has been very, very involved with the sport of dressage now for a number of years. She's the event director for the Sydney CDI 3-star event, which is, of course, Australia's premier dressage competition, and that's been going on now for close to 20 years. She's also the event director for the Australian Dressage Championships, including the CDIW, the qualifier down there. And she's been the honorary secretary for Dressage New South Wales, the body responsible for the running of dressage in the state of New South Wales. And she's also, as if she has any spare time at all, she's also editor of the Centerline magazine, a newsletter, colour magazine that goes out to their members down there in New South Wales. So I was delighted to be able to catch up with Toni and hear really how the sport is growing down there and what opportunities there are for young riders coming into the sport and for those a little bit further up the ladder who are trying to get a place on the team. So let's hear from Toni. Well, Toni, welcome to the Dressage Radio Show. It's great to have you on, calling you all the way from Sydney, which is your home, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Chris. It's nice to be with you.
It's great to have you on the show. And we talked about it for a while, Toni, because, I've known your husband, Frans, now for a number of years and of course met you while you were travelling with him. But I hadn't realised until recent months just how involved you are in the sport of dressage in Australia. And as I said in your introduction, you're the event director for the CDI 3-star there in Sydney, which is Australia's premier event, and event director for the championships, including the World Cup qualifier. You wear a lot of hats, secretary for Dressage New South Wales, and you also edit the Centerline magazine, so you're a busy lady.
Yes, I am, yes. It's most of the work I do is all voluntary based, as is, with a lot of people in Australia, all our events, well, the majority of our events are all run by volunteer committees. I get paid a small fee for running the CDI 3-star and our Australian Dressage Championships, but the rest of it is on a voluntary basis, and a lot of people commit a lot of their time and a lot of their effort to the sport. So even though I do a lot, I'm not alone. There are a lot of other people that do a similar amount of work, and some may even do a little bit more and as well hold down a full-time job. But I certainly couldn't hold down a full-time job doing what I do now.
Well, I know that dressage is something that's been growing in Australia for a number of years. You've had the occasional good rider that's really come to the fore internationally, but the team is a little bit harder to put together, harder to get that kind of high-level exposure to the sport that you need without going to Europe, isn't it, Toni?
Well, it is. I mean, we have probably 3 to 4 CDIs in Australia, and they're spread mainly between Victoria and New South Wales. We run 2 here in New South Wales, and we have the Victorian Championships runs the CDIW, and we have the Pacific League final. But other than, and Equitana, when Equitana happens every 2 years, they run a CDIW. Sometimes it becomes the Pacific League final. But, there's 4 opportunities for our riders to ride in front of international judges and get those sort of qualifying scores that they need. So the opportunities are pretty limited for our riders in Australia, and the distances are great. For them, they've got to travel. I mean, they travel in other countries as well, but in other countries you perhaps have, well, in Europe, for instance, you've got access to a lot more CDIs than what we have here. So it's difficult for our riders that want to remain in Australia to actually compete at that top level.
Now, you got into the sport a number of years ago, didn't you? What persuaded you to get involved with the administration and help with the promotion of and organisation of competitions, Toni?
Well, France was involved with in the admin side earlier than what I was. I was working full-time, and when I finished work, I started with getting sponsorship for dressage events, and from then on, we both could see that the competitions were pretty much, all very low key. There was no sense of an event as such. It was just basically a competition, and we both wanted to develop that a little bit and put on more of a show. And so we just started in a small way with state championships, and then that developed, and we went on, and where we are now. And I could see that a lot of, because they're all volunteer committees, there are a lot of things that could be done a lot better had someone that had the time and the willingness to be able to develop it a little bit further, put in a little bit more effort. So things weren't terribly professional at the time, and there's still a long way to go, but that's probably where I came in, with just trying to use the skills that I had from work, my working background, and took that into the sport.
And of course, one of the challenges you face in Australia, as we do here in the States, it's a different system, of course, but it's the sheer size of the country, Toni. And so do you have areas throughout the country? I know you're in New South Wales, in Sydney, New South Wales, but looking at the whole of the country, do you have areas where there's a concentration of dressage activity?
Well, yes, it would mainly, the main areas would be New South Wales and its Sydney metropolitan area. The Sydney area basin is, a very large pool of riders, and also then you go up into the Hunter Valley area. That also has a very strong sort of dressage population there. And then you go down into Victoria. There's quite a strong dressage community down in Victoria. And also, it's mainly the eastern states, Queensland, around the Brisbane type area, and then the Sydney metropolitan, come Hunter Valley, and then Melbourne, and the areas around Melbourne. That's probably where the big hubs of dressage are. But, there are other little areas throughout the country, basically, that do have smaller clusters of riders, but then they tend to be a bit more spread out. So I guess Sydney Metro would be the big one.
And over the time you've been involved with the sport, which is some 25 years or more, Toni, what have you seen as the shift in the sport to make it more popular? How do you see that's come about?
Well, I think probably the turning point was the Olympic Games in Sydney. We did have quite a strong following, obviously, for eventing here in Australia, but then it started to change a little bit, and dressage we're seeing now is probably attracting more spectators. Well, it is attracting more spectators than any of the other disciplines, which is really unusual in comparison to, say, jumping in Europe. And it's mainly the freestyle to music has brought in a lot of people. The Olympic Games, that sort of exposed dressage to the wider sort of audience. That's created a bit of an interest for people that maybe weren't involved with equestrian sports before. And from then, I think it sort of just developed. And, we're finding that the sport's certainly not it was growing up until the Sydney Games, and it hasn't stopped. It's still the dressage component for the Equestrian Australia membership is still pretty high. I think it's about 40% of the participating horses are dressage horses. So, okay, some of those do have cross purposes and may compete in eventing as well as dressage, but it's still a very, very significant portion of the participating horses is, dressage related. So, and I think, junior riders, young riders, that's becoming where years ago they were probably more interested in just belting around the bush and going over cross-country jumps. There's a bit of a swing, and younger riders are starting to get a little bit more interested in riding dressage, which is really good.
So that turning point, and you, as you said, was a sort of a springboard. Was having the games there, and it sort of fired up some interest in the sport.
I think so.
Do you think then, Toni, that also inspired people within the sport or within equestrian sport, period, and it developed a wider training base of trainers? Was that evident as well over time?
Oh, I can't really say, but probably did. I think that since the Games, we've started, even though we don't have a lot of equestrian personalities or dressage personalities like they do in other countries, we do have a few riders that do have a following, and most of those riders are also trainers, so they're pretty active with giving clinics throughout the country. But access to trainers for the wider community is still fairly limited because of our distances, and riders do struggle with finding regular trainers unless you live close to an area where you do have access to a lot of different trainers. It is a bit of a problem for the regional areas, but I guess we do have a lot of coaches on our books, but I think one of the problems we've got, those coaches need access to higher level coaches as well, because a lot of them don't actually get exposed to trainers that are a bit more experienced than what they are, and I think that that's something that really should happen.
Well, clinics are always valuable, aren't they? And I know you do have some European riders go down there to offer clinics and give them exposure to a wider audience to reach. To raise the bar. I mean, that's what it's all about, isn't it? Just
yes.
Getting that to filter down to a wider base. And so, do you see then that there are more clinics as such, and symposiums, and basically dressage programs, incentives for youth and youth programs overall, Toni? What does that look like?
Quite good. I guess we have in New South Wales, we have a government agency called the New South Wales Institute of Sport, and they support all of our top riders, I guess, which is our elite squad, the New South Wales elite squad, and our talent and young rider squad. So we have a series of clinics that are put on probably about 6 a year, and they're made available to our squad riders. And then on top of that, we have our national squads. I can't really speak about that side of it too much, other than we do have the occasional trainer comes down and gives national squad clinics. We have quite a strong young rider community up in Queensland and Victoria, as well as New South Wales, and they're fairly active with putting on clinics and training opportunities, and now very strong state-based championships for young riders, and that's been really good. We now have a series of CDIYs throughout Australia, which has given those young riders something to aim for. We may only have 6 to 8 riders competing in those CDIYs, but still, it's a start, and it does give the other one something to aim for. But we probably could do more on providing more training clinics for riders, but it all comes back to people to do it, and funding also to make that happen.
Absolutely. Well, we know that you're producing some great riders. Some have been based in Europe for a while. Hayley Beresford, of course, we had on the show here a few weeks ago. But Parbury, they've done really well in Europe, building up to the games. So do you have any other rising stars there that we should be ready to look out for, Toni?
Well, put me on the spot there. We probably have some young riders that, if they get access to some good horses, we have a lot of really good riders, but putting the right combinations together, the good riders with the good horses, is always a bit of a challenge. But we have a couple of young riders that if they're given the right opportunities, they probably will develop in the future. We have other riders that are always Rachel Sanner, people would know. She's represented Australia at Olympic Games in the past. She has a very good horse. She may get on the team for Kentucky. And, people like Rosie Ryan, but they're not, they're riders that are fairly established and have been around for a while, but keep on producing good horses and are always up at the top. But if you're looking for people that wouldn't be that well known, there are a few. Alexi Hellier is a young girl that's been doing well in CDIYs in Australia. Another girl from Queensland, Victoria Welch. She's doing well in small tour. And Robbie Soster, another New South Wales rider, who's doing really well. And, if she's given the right opportunity, she could develop into one of our riders of the future. And we have a couple of girls in Europe that are over there training and riding. Brianna Burgess is one. She's been with Monica Teodorescu, I think she's with, for a number of years. And she's a talented young rider that could do well in the future. So, there are some riders here, probably, half a dozen. I'm sure there are more, but I can just think of off the top of my head that, given the right opportunities, they could develop and be riders of the future.
Well, maybe we should have them on the show here, Toni, and help promote their career and their inspiration as they make a career in the sport. And that they have that disadvantage of being isolated in a large country and away from the centre of the action. So I think we should have them on the show. Don't you? Yeah, that would be good. Hayley Beresford has started up a little scheme where she's inviting two riders to go and spend up to, I don't know what it is, 2 months or something with her. And because it's difficult for them to go away for long periods. A lot of them might have other commitments. They may be at university or they may still be at school. But she's offered to have two people, like working pupils, there with her for a couple of months. So that's something that's I think really good for our riders, and she's already had two over there, a girl from Western Australia, I think, and there's another one with her, and one's about to come home, and then she'll take another one on. So I think that's really good for the sport here and for the younger riders, because it'll give them exposure to what actually happens on the other side of the world, which is different to what happens here in Australia. Yes, for sure. And, of course, there's nothing like a good mentoring program like that. I think that's a wonderful incentive. Well, when we catch up with these riders, Toni, I think that's a great idea, and I'm glad you brought it to our attention. We'll certainly follow up with that and get some of those riders here on the show. Well, I want to thank you, Toni, so much for joining us this week. It's been great to catch up with you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Great to hear about the sport down under. And as I said, if you want to come on the Dressage Radio Show to promote Australian dressage, then just drop me an email, chris@horseradionetwork.com, and we'll be sure to include you. And I want to thank Toni again for joining us, and we wish you all the best with the World Equestrian Games coming up here shortly, Toni. I know your husband's going to be travelling over here in his capacity as, what is he, assistant chef de mission? Is that his job?
Yes.
Good for him. Well, look forward to catching up with him. Thanks again for joining us, Toni.
Thank you, Chris.
Well, our thanks again to Toni Venhaus. We will be following the Australian team, of course, as they make their way to the Kentucky Horse Park for the World Equestrian Games. I think it'll be a fascinating journey for them. Of course, a very long one. Not easy for them, having to train mostly in Europe to make that squad and to get the competition mileage they need against the best in the world. So we'll be following them with interest, of course. Well, we're going to take a short break here to hear from our friends over at Kentucky Performance Products, and when we come back, we're going to be talking to Tina Konyot.
Joint Armor from KPP provides your horse with the building blocks necessary to maintain healthy joints throughout his lifetime. Kentucky Performance Products Quality Assurance provides you with the confidence that you are purchasing a safe, high-quality product. Your satisfaction is guaranteed. Joint Armor is concentrated and affordable. One jar lasts a whole 75 days. Joint Armor helps maintain fluid motion and flexibility in your horse's joints. It also supports normal cartilage development and reduces joint deterioration. Learn more about Joint Armor from Kentucky Performance Products and all their other terrific products at kppusa.com. That's kppusa.com.
Well, those of you who followed sport closely will know that the selection trials at Gladstone, New Jersey rounded out this past weekend 2 fantastic weekends of sport. 4 competitions for the World Cup contenders, World Equestrian Games contenders, I should say. And it was Tina Konyot who stole the show there from start to finish and winning her first national championship in a very impressive fashion. Leading all the way from start to finish. But her performance was even more impressive that she concluded her freestyle score with a freestyle score of 75.75. So it really was a fantastic couple of weeks for Tina, who's just been preparing all year and even longer to make the squad here. So she successfully made it onto the team, and so we were delighted to be able to catch up with Tina. Let's hear what she has to say about her recent weeks and all the excitement that goes with it. Well, Tina, welcome to the Dressage Radio Show, and thanks for joining us this week.
Thank you, Chris. It's good to be here.
And it's great to have you right after what has been an incredible 2 weeks for you. Congratulations on being a national champion, the USEF. That's your first Grand Prix championship win, national championship win. But just as important, and maybe a little bit more importantly too, you also have made it onto the World Equestrian Games nominated list, shortlist for the Games with Collecto the 5th.
Absolutely. It's been a tremendous journey. It's so exciting. And actually I haven't had a chance to really, it hasn't taken a hold of me yet. I've been walking around a little bit in the days and arriving yesterday. And actually today was the first day I said, oh my God, we're going to the World Equestrian Games. And
Yeah.
honest to God, today's the first moment it really hit me.
Well, it must be one of those things you sleep on it and you wake up and think, it's really happened.
It's really happened, and I suppose I'll have a different feeling after it's passed also, because every day is a new day, and we're not there yet. We are on the team, but with animals and ourselves, we're all so fragile. Life's so fragile, so we take it one day at a time. But we're certainly looking forward to it and preparing for it. It's very exciting.
Well, what an exciting partnership you have there with your 12-year-old Danish stallion Collecto. Now, we should tell everyone that you recorded a 4-day average over the 4 competitions there at Gladstone, New Jersey, for the selection trials of something like 73.320.
I believe that's correct. I don't have that in front of me, but it was a very nice score. I was very, very pleased with it.
You must have been, and then particularly with your freestyle score, 75.75. That must have been a wonderful feeling when you wrapped up, but not just winning one competition, but winning all the four that mattered.
Absolutely, Chris. Every day is a wonderful feeling when you have a horse like that. But I think it was the third competition of the Grand Prix when I realized that would probably most likely tie up a spot for me for the WAG, for the team. And that was the most teary-eyed moment for me.
Well, I know there were some emotions as it all became a reality for you. And tell us now, a few days after the competition, how your horse is. How has he taken it all?
He's very happy. He came off the trailer Monday afternoon, coming back from Gladstone. We had meetings on Monday morning, and we were very anxious to get home because he loves his large double box with 4 windows, and he's very happy to be in there. So when he came off the trailer, he was shaking his head and leading us into the stable, basically. And he's had a couple of days of holiday in the paddock, rolling around, and no work on Monday, no work today. just paddock work, he calls it, strolling around and rolling and grazing. And I hope he loves it, because he looks like a very happy boy enjoying himself doing that. I know many of the horses, or I should say majority of them, do not have that opportunity. As a matter of fact, none of my teammates do that with their horses. So, to each his own, but my horse, I want him to be a horse and be happy, and he certainly is. And feeling quite fresh. I think I have a feeling he knows that he has had a lot of success.
He knows he's really special right now. Is he playing it up?
It looks like it, I promise you. You have to smile and laugh when you see him coming out of the stable. He's trying to bite and, playing around and squealing, and sometimes you think you're walking a pig instead of a horse, because he squeals like a little pig. So it's a very emotional feeling for me. We have a tremendous connection, the two of us. I love him so much, and it's mutual. Everybody can see that it's mutual.
Well, tell us, going into this competition, Tina, you've been over to Europe. You were preparing, obviously, for this all year. How did he feel coming in? Did he tell you that he was spot on and that he could pull this off?
You know what? I don't believe he was spot on, but in all fairness to the animals, both Todd and myself returned from a tour in Europe. I had a little bit more strenuous tour because of the time span I was there. I was only a short period of 5 weeks arriving there, and I would have been there 6 weeks, but I had some fluid that had to be drawn out of my knee, so I had to postpone my trip a week. And once we arrived in Europe, 6 days later, we traveled, 12 hours to Austria to a wonderful competition there where he was very, very good. And back home again, and then we prepared for Aachen, which was a tremendous experience. And then again, traveling back home, when you think about the jet lag alone for the animals, the stress, it's not just being a great competition horse, but it's about having a horse that can handle the mental stress of all of it, dealing with traveling. And some of the horses do not travel so well, and I'm so grateful and lucky and fortunate to have a horse that takes everything in stride. It's all very easy for him. And we got back from Aachen, out of quarantine. He was back into work from my farm to the day we arrived in Gladstone. It was 6 days, which is a very, very short period of time. And we competed the 7th day in the Grand Prix. And I would say the first weekend he felt a little bit tired for me. He never, ever says no. He never shuts down. He never tells me, I'm not doing this, Mom. But you can also feel, when you have a connection with an animal and a bond with them, when they're just on top of everything. And I wasn't pushing him either because there was no reason to do that. I know he would perform for me, but he was not spot on at his best and peaking. We had a little break that week. We did not ride. We didn't ride Monday, Tuesday. Wednesday was a very light ride on Wednesday. Thursday we worked a little bit more of a normal day, and then competed the Grand Prix on Friday. And the second weekend he felt quite good. I must say I didn't feel him being tired either on Friday for the Grand Prix or on Sunday for the freestyle. So I'm sure, he also gives me an awful lot. Without asking for it, he wants to do the job for me, and he's a happy horse that way, and I believe that's very, very important for any of them to want to do the job properly and to be at their best. They need to be happy, as we do as people.
Tell us, how did he manage the heat? Did that bother him at all? It was very hot and humid in Gladstone, wasn't it?
The second weekend was better than the first weekend. We were fortunate. We were able to deal with the heat a little bit. We had a bit of break and overcast, and the first weekend we competed in the morning. We could deal with it, but we don't have control over these conditions, and this sport is not for the weak. You're going to have rainstorms, you're going to have bad footing, you're going to have heat, you're going to have humidity, and that, I think, you weed out those horses, the weaker horses that cannot handle that. Mine is a big, dark horse, used to the cold climate. I take extra precautions for the heat. I do extra things for him to keep him on a comfort zone. I'm very, very careful with that. We have ice water, before we go in, and make sure that he's cool, and I don't do too much. And there's lots of extra precautions we take with that. But I don't think it's comfortable for any of the horses, no matter if they deal with it well or they don't deal with it well. It's not a comfortable situation to be working in humidity as an athlete.
Well, as you said, you have an established partnership with him. He is a stallion. Now, what kind of personality does he have, Tina?
I think they're water balloons, Chris. I don't really think he's a stallion. I think he came from a wax museum. I actually watched him today, and he was in the paddock, and I have a special little setup of a smaller barn for my old retired horses, which is a mare that's 28 years old and another gelding who's 19, and my little girl donkey Trixie. So they can all talk to each other over the fence, and honest to God, he doesn't act like, he's definitely not the normal stallion that way. I've had very dominant stallions that I've trained and that I've worked with over the years, and he is not one of them. He traveled back from Aachen with Beezy Madden's mare, one of her jumping horses that she competed at Aachen. And, every so often he'd say hello to her, and he'd go back to eating his hay. So it's a very unusual stallion. Very unusual.
How would you characterize his personality?
He didn't have one when I got him 4 years ago, when he first came into my life, and now it's a horse. He has lots of personality. If he likes someone, once he gets to know, even with my groom, he's a little bit careful sometimes. If he's not sure of a new person coming around him, he's a little bit quieter. Once he knows you, he's pulling on you and trying to take things out of your hand, out of your pocket. He hugs me and grabs a hold of the back of my pants and won't let me go. And honestly, you have to laugh when you see it. It's very amusing. So when he sees Julio, his groom, then he grabs a hold of him and holds him also. And, he's very playful. He has lots of toys and stuffed toys and balls, and he throws them out of the window. And now he has personality. He's developed into someone special.
How did you find him?
I found him in the north of Denmark, and it was a gentleman that I had known for some years, John Brialson, who said to me for many years, from when I met the man, he breeds an awful lot of horses. I believe he has something like 800 horses, and he had said to me over the years, Tina, you must come to Denmark and, look at our horses, and, you should ride one of my horses and look at these horses, and blah, blah, blah. It went on for some years. And then finally, in the last top horse I had was in 2004. That was Anna Karenina. And after that, 05, I didn't really have anything coming up, and, no sponsorship behind me, no horses coming up in my hands. And some friends of mine, I don't know how it all came together. It was a matter of a girlfriend of mine, actually. She said, Tina, why don't we go over to Denmark and take a look? There's an auction coming up, and we ended up going over there 4 years ago. And nobody wanted him. It was no one bid on him in the auction, which was rather interesting and great for me anyway. And I don't think he was a lovely horse, a little bit of a weak stallion, not much of a trot, a very nice walk, a pretty canter. And that's how we ended up with him. I had a couple of friends of mine, non-horse people, that helped me. It was not an expensive horse, but they helped me to put it together that I could purchase the animal. And that's how it all started. So it's a huge satisfaction to know that I developed this horse. I made him into something special, and I think many people do think he's special. I wasn't even sure in the beginning, Chris, actually. I wasn't quite sure what I got myself into, if I could really pull it off. And I was looking to make a Grand Prix horse. I wasn't looking for a small tour horse or a sales horse. I was looking for something for myself that I could create. And it happened. It absolutely happened, and I'm so grateful for that.
What do you think made your partnership with him bond the way that it has, Tina? What do you think the key to...
I have a partnership with all my horses, Chris. I don't think that it was a horse that had a great life. I don't think he had, he was a number in a big facility with lots of horses. He was sold as a younger horse to a woman in Finland. A girl from Finland was riding him. I believe he was just a number, and definitely had some talent to him, lots of elasticity, and, he didn't act like a stallion at all. He really was such a quiet horse. It was unusual. So I don't think that it's just about his relationship with me. I know that I have a relationship with all my horses, as I have some of my old horses, one I've had for 25 years, one I've had for 15 years. I mean, they're in my life, and I treat them like very good friends of mine. I cherish having them and owning them and taking care of them. They do so much for us, and stallions in general, I believe, bond to people. I've had other stallions in my life that were very, very close to me, close in my life.
Well, now you're coming to a particular milestone in your partnership and with him and in your career. So how does this look for the next few weeks leading up to WEG? Tina, you're back home now in Connecticut. What's the schedule now for the next few weeks?
We have a couple of weeks of downtime at the moment. The horses, they have a well-earned rest that they certainly worked hard. All the horses worked very hard this week. I will pick him up over the next days very slowly, just in a lot of basic elastic work that I do with him. I don't believe that we need to retrain our horses, or they know all the movements of the Grand Prix. I think it's very important to stick to your basic work and incorporate your lessons from there. So we'll slowly pick it up this week. We have to return back to Gladstone, all of us that are team members, on the 4th of September. I believe Stefan is arriving on the 3rd, and I believe Catherine and Todd will also arrive on the 4th. So we'll all gather together as a team, including Catherine Haddad, on the 4th of September, and we will remain there in training together and, forming our partnership together, which, thank God, we're all very good friends and very fond of each other. And we leave for Kentucky on the 18th of September. The horses will ship to Kentucky.
So what excites you the most about this turning point now and the journey that you're heading, that you have in front of you, Tina?
What excites me the most? Is that what you said?
Yes.
I think every day is quite exciting. I'm not that, I'm not a person who gets so excited. I'm very low key with all of it, and I can take the pressure and the stress, and, we look forward to it. I don't look at the situation as excitement. I certainly don't want that to happen, where you would change your everyday life with your animal. It's very important to keep an even keel with everything. I'm just terribly looking forward to all of it. That's once we're there, ask me another question. Once we're on the ground and everything's happening, and we get the Grand Prix behind us as a team, then I think you could ask me, Tina, was that exciting? And then I probably will yell, into your telephone there to hear the excitement. But at the moment, it's a day-by-day routine.
Absolutely. Well, as you say, taking one step at a time on the rest of your journey to the World Equestrian Games. Well, we want to wish you the very best of luck, Tina, with that.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's a pleasure to speak to you.
And we will look forward to catching up with you when you get here to the Kentucky Horse Park, and hopefully you'll come and join us on the show again whilst you're here.
Absolutely, a pleasure. All the best.
Thank you, Tina. Well, our thanks again to Tina for joining us this week, and the very best of luck to her and all of them as they make their way onto that squad and to prepare for what's going to be a very, very exciting competition here. The best dressage in the world is going to take place here in the Kentucky Horse Park. And that will happen on September 27th, 28th, 29th and October 1st. That's when the dressage competition will be held as part of the World Equestrian Games, which itself begins on September 25th. And I want to remind you all that we will be there, and I will be recording the shows to a live audience each day in the Kentucky Horse Park. We will be on stage in the Alltech Pavilion, the Alltech Experience Pavilion, which will be just a short walk from the main stadium there. So if you come to the horse park, come over and say hello. We look forward to meeting our listeners. We always love to hear from our listeners. So come and say hello if you're coming to the World Equestrian Games. You will find me there recording all three of the shows that I host. That is the Jumping Radio Show, the Dressage Radio Show, and of course the Eventing Radio Show. And we will be following the action and bringing you daily coverage there on each of the shows and on their respective sports. So that about wraps it up for this week. I want to thank our guests, Tina Konyot and Toni Venhaus from Down Under. And also want to remind you that Todd Fletcher will be our guest on next week's show. As always, you can join me on Facebook if you want to follow the fan page there. And, of course, our show notes are always at dressageradio.com. And if you're a tweeter, you can follow us on Twitter at Horse Radio and Chris E. Stafford. You can also contact me with any comments, questions, or suggestions. As always, I'd love to hear from you. Just send me an email, chris@horseradionetwork.com. And our voicemail number, of course, as always, 270-803-0025. I'd like to thank our sponsors, as always, for supporting the show and encourage you to support them in the way they support us and make these shows possible. And, of course, our backstage crew that turn the shows out for us every week. And don't forget to check out all the other shows on the Horse Radio Network. We now have, 8 shows between us, and so there is something for everyone here on the Horse Radio Network. Well, that's about it for this week. I'm going to be joined by Mary Lauritsen. She's going to have a guest next week here on the show, and as I said, Todd Fletcher will also be a guest, so looking forward to that next week. But in the meantime, be careful out there, and don't forget to join us here, same place, same time next week. Until then, thanks to all of you around the world for listening, and don't forget to practice safe riding by always wearing your helmet, fastening your chin strap, and keep smiling.